Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible, verse by verse, a plain and simple study through the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are currently in Exodus chapter 19, and this chapter, and this is kind of interesting to understand Israel's journey. Now, I'll say this as a sidebar issue. A lot of times people who criticize the Bible without reading it, without reading the entire narrative and context. In other words, when you read through the Bible and you say, well, man, God seemed he was really hard on Israel or the surrounding nations that he commanded to destroy, right? So in the upcoming chapters, understand the foundation that God lays so that you can understand it. When I say understand it, you will be able to see the point. It's not necessarily that you're going to always understand it. And in just a couple of chapters, you will see what I mean by that. But understand that Israel, like no other nation, saw a manifestation of God from the plagues to the parting of the Red Sea. And now in this chapter, they are going to actually see the presence of God face to face. And the whole point is that this makes Israel unbelief unbelievable. And keep this in mind in the context of a pagan world where every nation around them worshiped pagan gods. Idolatry was the norm. It's different in our times because idolatry takes upon a different form. But during this time, there was no doubt that nations worshipped deities. And even the Roman Empire, right, centuries later, who, remember, the Greeks and the Romans prided themselves on philosophy, wisdom, still worship pagan deities. So, like no other nation, you see God revealing himself. No other nations had that. No other pagan deity revealed himself. It was people who said these deities existed. People claimed, but the deities themselves never manifested themselves. Why? Because, one, they're not real. But God reveals himself, and that's interesting. So let's get into it. Exodus chapter 19, verse 1 says, in the third month, on the same day of the month that the Israelites had left the land of Egypt, they entered the wilderness of Sinai. So we're now going into the third month, 2 months. They had been away from Israel for 2 months. And in this third month, this is going to be interesting also what God is doing in this third month. What we see, one of the first things that God is going to establish as an ordinance, as a policy for society. All right. So the third month, and again, remember I said we're going to be tracking a timeline here. So 2 months, 60 days, right, since they left. Now they're in the third month. And a lot happens during the third month. And by the way, the first 5 books, right? You see kind of a majority of the focus of things happening at certain times. The first month, right? And then you have the third month, and then you're going to have the second year, and then you're going to jump to the 38th year and the 40th year before they go into across the Jordan and go into the promised land. So it says in the third month, on the same day of the month that the Israelites had left the land of Egypt, they entered the wilderness of Sinai. After they departed from Rephidim, they entered the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness, and Israel camped there in front of the mountain. Now, another kind of note is that they should have been in the promised land by now, but they're complaining. Their unwillingness to believe kept them in this circle, and ultimately they will die in the wilderness, this generation. It says, Moses went up to the mountain of God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain. This is what you must say to the house of Jacob, and explain to the Israelites. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to me. Now he used a euphemism, right? Eagle's wings, and there are a lot of kind of ways that theologians explain this. Okay, we're not studying from a theological position; we're just studying the scriptures. However, when you see this kind of language, you can see how God is communicating with Israel. In other words, he's not saying he has eagle's wings, but he's communicating in a language how we communicate with one another. Like when your mother says, look, if you don't stop playing on that couch, I'm going to knock you until tomorrow. She's not literally saying or literally meaning to knock you into tomorrow, but you also get her meaning. Okay. Verse 5. Now notice so again, remember, we're in the third month. He says, you've seen all of this. Verse 5. Now, if you will listen to me and carefully keep my covenant, you will be my own possessions out of all the peoples, although all the earth is mine. And you will be my kingdom of priests and my holy nation. These are the words you ought to say to the Israelites. He's telling Moses this. Now, so Moses is in the mountain. He's in the presence of God. We're going to see these a few times where he will go up to the mountain. And he will come back. And then, of course, he's the spokesman of God. Now, he says that you've seen my miracles. Now, this becomes the foundation of their faith. That they have seen his miracles. And they have, so the question is, why do they keep falling into idolatry? They've seen the miracles. This is also what faith is about. In other words, faith is always based on evidence. Okay? They've seen this evidence. They have enough evidence right now to where it's now, okay, we can move to the next step. The evidence they have seen, how God crippled the nation of Israel, how God carried them, as he said, on eagle's wings. So they have enough faith now to say, God is going to get us to the promised land. And then he makes this promise to them. He says, if you keep my covenant, you will be my own possession out of all peoples, although the earth is mine. Keep that in mind, because that is true. The earth is the Lord even at this time. But as we are reading through the Old Testament, we're focused on Israel, but let's keep in mind that there's also Greek, right? There's Australia, there's the Americas, there's the South Americas, right? There's Europe. We're just not focused on this. But he says that all the earth is mine. Now, this is also from a judgment perspective. All the earth is God. He is the creator of the earth. He declares he's the creator of the earth. And so all the earth will answer to him, the creator of the earth. And then he says, you will be my kingdom of priests and my holy nations. Now, the kingdom of priests here will not last. This is going to be narrowed down to the tribe of Levi. Right now, it is the firstborn, but then it's going to be narrowed down to the tribe of Levi. We won't see this term kingdom of priests manifest until the millennial reign of Christ, where during that period of time, Israel will be that kingdom of priests. Okay. All right, verse 7. After that, Moses came back and he summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words that the Lord had commanded him. Then all the peoples responded together, we would do all that the Lord has spoken. So Moses brought the people's words back to the Lord. Now you see this kind of mediator. But you see a mediator here. And what's going to change between, of course, this period of time and then when Jesus comes is that you will no longer have this mediator, this go-between. How God speaks to Moses, Moses comes and speaks to the people, and then the people, as they respond, which they don't mean, but as they respond, then now Moses takes the words back. This is what you call a mediator. Verse 9. The Lord said to Moses, I'm going to come to you in a dense cloud, so that the people will hear when I speak with you and will always believe you. Then Moses reported the people's words to the Lord. Again, you kind of see something here that it's now keep this in mind. Here is God saying that I'm going to communicate with you. Now, what is getting ready to be set up is that they would have actually seen the presence of God when God communicates with Moses. We're going to see how this kind of plays out. But this is interesting how they will notice they would have seen this. But watch how this plays out here though. Verse 10. And the Lord told Moses, go to the people and concentrate them today and tomorrow. They must wash their clothes and be prepared by the third day. For on the third day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Now again, this is astounding that the nation will see this. Put boundaries for the people all around the mountains and say, be careful that you do not go up on the mountain and touch its base. Anyone who touches the mountains will be put to death. No hand may touch him. Instead, he may be stoned or shot with arrows. No animal or man will live. And when the ram's horn sound a long blast, they may go up to the mountain. Now, strict instructions here. All right, strict instructions. And Moses came down from the mountain to the people and consecrated them, and they washed their clothes. He said to them, be prepared by the third day. Do not have sexual relations with the women. One of the few times where God actually tells people to abstain from sex, married people, okay, to abstain from sex in a time of consecration. And in this case, this was going to be a glorious consecration. In other words, and the idea of holiness and holiness always, you do not treat God as common. That's the key there. You don't treat God as common. So he tells them, wash your clothes, abstain from sexual relations, be prepared. Verse 16. On the third day when the morning came, there was a thunder and lightning and a thick cloud on the mountain, and a loud trumpet sounded, so that all the people in the camp shuddered. Now, let me just say this. Whenever God shows up, there's always going to be a physical reaction of fear. So when you to just kind of keep that in mind when you read a lot of these people's books and their so-called claims that they have had these supernatural experiences with God. But I digress. Verse 17. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was completely enveloped in smoke because the Lord came down on it in fire. The smoke went up like a smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain shook violently. As the sound of the trumpets grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in the thunder. And the Lord came down on the Mount Sinai at the top of the mountain. Then the Lord summoned Moses to the top of the mountain, and he went up. The Lord directed Moses, go down and warn the people not to break through to see the Lord, otherwise many of them will die. Now, again, we see this all the time when God says, don't do something. You're always going to have those characters, but it's going to try to peak. And that's what you have. You have people who are trying to go past the barriers to peak, right? I want to see, ooh, this is exciting. All right, lost my feed here. All right. Let me go back to. All right. Verse 22. Let me go back to verse 21 again. Then the Lord directed Moses, "Go down and warn the people not to break through to see the Lord, otherwise many of them will die. Even the priests who came near the Lord must purify themselves, or the Lord will break out in anger against them." But Moses responded to the Lord, "The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai since you warned us, and put a boundary around the mountains and consider it holy." And the Lord replied to him, "Go down, Moses, go down and come back with Aaron. But the priests and the people must not break through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out in anger against them." So Moses went down and told the people. All right, so now we're going to see this in the next chapter, and I'm not going to get into the next chapter now, but there are some things I think is interesting about this. Okay, that Israel actually has a manifestation of the presence of God. Israel actually has a manifestation. So the question is, why do they continually fall into idolatry? Why do they continually sin? And that's interesting. Well, the reason is because of the sin nature of man. That's why. But what is still, let me also say this, that remember, the law of Moses has not yet been given. And the law is given as a restrainer. In other words, if you didn't have that. So in the next chapter, we're going to get into the 10 Commandments. If you did not have that, right, if you did not have that, then the people would be, and I'm talking about just everywhere, the people would be unrestrained. Think about what we have now, right? Think about what we have now with the law. And then just think if we didn't have the law. So, and one of the reasons we see God in such manifestation is because they did not have the law. And as he is establishing, the covenant and the law. So one of the reasons why we don't see as great as manifestation, okay, is we already have what they needed, or what God was establishing and given. And I'll get more into that later. All right, guys, we'll pick it up in chapter 20 in the next study. I'll see you then.